High in the Ozark Mountains of northern Arkansas, winter never truly ends. It only changes shape. The snow hasn't fully melted, yet the mist from the deep forest is already creeping across the ridges, wrapping the hills in a damp, ghostly haze. Down below, movement stirs. The forests breathe heavy, because the invaders have returned. Feral hogs, relentless and cunning, are spreading once again, pouring down from the ridgelines into the valleys, tearing through fields of young corn and tender sweet potatoes just beginning to sprout. They don't fear the snow, they don't slow for the mud, and they never stop. Where they go, the earth breaks open, roots torn, soil overturned, silence shattered. From the frozen slopes of the north to the rain-soaked woods of the southern lowlands, a new operation is underway. Hunters rise before dawn, their breath turning to fog in the frigid air. They move with precision, rifles steady, dogs eager, GPS units glowing dimly in the dark. Every step, every sound, every whisper of the wind could mean the difference between success and chaos. But this isn't sport. This is a counteroffensive, a fight to stop an enemy that multiplies faster than nature can recover. The mission isn't about conquest, it's about control, about protecting the land before the herds tear through another season, before the forest floors are ripped apart, before disease spreads through mud and water alike. Out here, the battlefield stretches across two worlds, snow and forest, cold and chaos. The hunters stand between them, not as conquerors, but as guardians, determined to reclaim what's being lost, inch by inch, valley by valley. This is NEO Farm, and this is Operation Ozark, where man and nature meet in the silence of winter, not to destroy, but to defend the balance that keeps this wild land alive. Deep within the forest where silence once ruled and moonlight filtered softly through the pines, the ground began to tremble. At first it was faint, a dull vibration, almost like a heartbeat beneath the soil. Then came the sounds, claws raking against roots, the crack of branches snapping, the low grunts echoing between the trees. The scent of damp earth mixed with rot rose into the night air. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't a predator, it was something far worse. A moving force of destruction. They came like shadows, feral hogs, hundreds strong, pushing through the undergrowth with ruthless hunger. Their tusks carved through roots and saplings. Their hooves churned the soil into chaos. Hillsides collapsed where they rooted too deep. Streams turned brown with mud, and once lush clearings became wastelands of broken ground. Every inch of forest they touched bore the mark of ruin. People tried everything to stop them. Barbed wire fences that were torn apart, traps that caught only a few while the rest learned and avoided them, repellents, and ultrasonic devices that promised miracles but delivered only brief pauses. Nothing held for long. These creatures were smart, terrifyingly smart. They learned, they adapted, and they bred faster than anyone could respond. One sow could birth 2 litters a year, a dozen piglets each time. Multiply that by thousands, and soon the land itself began to lose its balance. The forest was slipping away, not with a crash, but with a slow, relentless unraveling. So the hunters came, not as thrill seekers, but as guardians. They brought night vision scopes, GPS trackers, thermal drones, and a kind of patience forged from necessity. Each one knew the truth. This wasn't about domination, it was about restoration. They weren't there to kill for sport. They were there to take back the land, to restore the rhythm of nature before it was too late. This was no ordinary hunt. This was a reclamation. Dawn breaks over the frozen wilderness. The hunting crew arrives in silence, breath steaming in the icy air. Before them stretches a vast forest, blanketed in snow so deep it swallows sound itself. This is no ordinary woodland. It's a fortress of frost and the perfect hiding ground for giants. Far across the ridge, movement stirs, dark shapes weaving through the white expanse. Dozens, no, hundreds of them. Wild boars, massive and relentless, carving trails through the snow like living shadows. Their sheer number sends a chill deeper than the cold itself. It's an unsettling sight, nature's quiet beauty standing in stark contrast to the chaos it conceals. Beneath the peaceful surface of the mountain, danger breathes, the kind that tests courage, patience, and instinct, all in the same heartbeat. This is the battlefield few ever see, a place where every step could change the balance between man and the wild. The silence of the mountain shattered. Echo after echo rolled through the frozen air. Each sound wasn't just a shot, it was a statement of defense. Alex and his crew were out there not for sport, but for balance. Holding the line against a force that nature itself seemed to have lost control over. All around them, chaos unfolded. The wild boars scattered in every direction, carving deep trenches through the snow as they fled into the mist. These weren't ordinary animals. They were the architects of destruction, capable of reshaping entire landscapes with their hooves and hunger. You see, Alex isn't new to this. He's been tracking and managing wild boars for over 15 years, long enough to know every sound, every track, every trick they pull to survive. But today was different. Today even he was stunned. The sheer size of these beasts, the force of their movement, it was something out of a nightmare. Later, he would explain that herds like this are one of the main reasons the mountain slopes here have begun to collapse. The soil torn apart by constant rooting, the trees unable to hold their ground. What begins as a few animals digging for food ends as an avalanche of destruction. Silent, steady, and unstoppable. Out here, every echo means more than noise. It's a message that nature's balance must be protected before it disappears completely. When winter blankets the mountains and forests in sheets of white, most creatures choose to hide, to sleep through the cold, waiting for spring's return. But there's one species that never hibernates, the wild boar. They keep moving, foraging, and destroying, becoming a silent threat to the mountain ecosystem during the freezing months. Wild boars have a habit of digging through soil to find roots, bulbs, or grubs. And when the ground is frozen, they must dig deeper and harder to survive. Those powerful tusks and hooves tear apart the soil's structure, uproot trees, and leave mountain slopes unable to hold water or resist erosion. When the snow melts or the rain comes, landslides and mud flows follow easily, especially in steep or sparsely forested areas. Not only that, the churned up soil gradually loses its natural nutrients, making it harder for forests to recover and weakening the vegetation season after season. During winter, when food is scarce, wild boars eat anything they can find, from young roots, seeds, mushrooms, even bird eggs or hibernating animals. This leaves many native species without food, breaking the ecological balance and severely reducing mountain biodiversity. They also compete directly with deer, elk, and other grazing animals, forcing native wildlife to retreat further into the shrinking wilderness. As the snow thickens and the forests run out of food, herds of wild boars move closer to villages, farms, and livestock barns. They plow up fields, smash fences, flip feed bins, and dig through orchards, causing serious damage to farmers in the highlands. And it's not just destruction. They can also threaten human safety, especially when hungry or cornered. At such times, wild boars become aggressive and fearless, attacking anything that stands in their way. Alongside the physical destruction comes an equally dangerous biological threat. Wild boars are known carriers of deadly diseases such as African swine fever, ASF, leptospirosis, pleuropneumonia, and various intestinal parasites. Just one contact with shared water sources, grazing lands, or livestock pens can spread infection to farm animals, and sometimes even to humans. In the cold, viruses survive longer, making disease control nearly impossible. Even around mountain streams and frozen lakes, the presence of wild boars is unmistakable. They dig along the banks in search of water or food, muddying the water, breaking the natural ice layer, and disrupting fish and aquatic species that depend on cold, clean habitats. When the vegetation along the streams is uprooted, melting snow runs faster, washing away soil and rocks, leading to severe erosion in the lower valleys. Most alarming of all, wild boars breed year-round. With few natural predators, their population can double within just a few months. A single sow can give birth to 2 litters a year, each with 5 to 10 piglets, enough to turn a peaceful forest into a wasteland in just one winter. In the cold stillness of winter, when nature seems to sleep, a quiet battle continues. A battle between humankind and the beast that makes the mountains groan. The wild boar, once a symbol of primal strength, now stands as a question mark over the balance that nature once held sacred.
Ağacın arkasına çıkıyor şimdi sen.
Over 600,000 wild boars. And that's just counting the Aegean and Anatolia regions. That number alone is enough to shock anyone, from farmers to ecologists. But this is merely the tip of the iceberg. Across the entire territory of Turkey, the actual population could easily surpass 1 million. They reproduce faster than any other large mammal in Europe, as if Turkey were some kind of untamed breeding paradise. A single sow can give birth to up to 10 piglets per litter, and she can do this twice a year. In a temperate climate, without any significant natural predators, wild boar populations are exploding beyond anyone's expectations. They aren't just present, they're everywhere, from lush hilltops to sprawling cornfields. Locals call it the invasion of the night, the image of entire herds sweeping down onto farmland, tearing apart irrigation systems, snapping fences, and leaving devastation in their wake as if a mini earthquake had struck. Headlights, barking bun, even gunshots. Nothing seems to stop these forest monsters. If anything, it only makes them more aggressive. The question is no longer, where did they come from? Now, the haunting question is whether Turkey can contain this wild surge before it completely spirals out of control. When crops are flattened, fences broken, and fields turned into battlegrounds, it becomes clear. This isn't just an agricultural problem, it's a fight for survival. To truly understand why wild boars have become master survivors, we need to look deeper at their astonishing adaptability, their extraordinary reproductive speed, and their nearly supernatural survival instincts. They don't just endure, they dominate quietly but overwhelmingly. And without decisive strategies and extraordinary human resolve, there will be no place in Turkey's landscape that remains safe. The wild boar, nature's ultimate survivor. They move not with panic, but with purpose. Entire herds, sometimes hundreds deep, flowing across the land like a living tide. In a single night, they can undo months of labor. Fields of wheat, rice, and grapes, gone. A farmer in Antalya remembers, it was like waking up after a storm that never happened in the sky, only on the ground. 2 days, over $3,000 lost. My fields look like the moon, cracked, gray, lifeless. But the damage goes far beyond crops. With every snout and hoof, they tear through topsoil, loosening the skin of the earth itself. Erosion follows. The rivers cloud with sediment. Wells turn brown. The fragile balance of the semi-arid plain begins to unravel. And then comes the invisible wave, disease, African swine fever, parasites, and infections that jump from wild to domestic animals, poisoning the chain of survival that humans depend on. Farmers whisper of strange sicknesses in their livestock, of water that smells different, of fear that never sleeps. Every night, the same ritual. Lights set up at the field edges, flares fired into the dark, the hum of generators echoing across the valleys. And still, the boars return. Fences are trampled, wires snap. The sound of the herd rolling in is like distant thunder. In the beginning, people fought the old way, with traps of steel and baits soaked in fermented corn. They caught a few, 20 here, 30 there, but the rest learned. Within weeks, they avoided the traps, shifting routes like ghosts, sensing danger before it came. Their memory is collective, their adaptation instant. The forest seems to teach them, to whisper in their favor. Local authorities tried drones, thermal cameras, night patrols, yet even the sky's eye lost them. The boars learned to move under trees, through canyons, under bridges, places no satellite could clearly see. Each attempt to control them only sharpened their instincts. What began as scattered losses soon grew into something else, a creeping invasion, silent and strategic. And in every broken field, every collapsed fence, every sleepless night, one realization echoed among the farmers. This isn't a nuisance anymore. It's a war, not of soldiers, but of survival. And nature, as always, plays to win. By 2025, wild boars had spread across almost every corner of Turkey. They roamed through the pine forests of the Black Sea region, wandered among olive groves near Izmir, and even crossed the borders of city suburbs. Surveillance footage from security cameras captured them trotting calmly across highways at 2 a.m., moving in tight formation like soldiers on patrol. In some villages, people had stopped walking alone after sunset. Motorcyclists would not ride without headlights flashing full beam. The danger wasn't from wolves or thieves, it was from herds that could appear from nowhere. Ecologists began to call it the silent flood. Unlike other invasive species that depend on human trade or transport, wild boars move by their own will. They dig, cross rivers, climb ridges. Their muscles are built for endurance, their stomachs for everything edible. Roots, crops, insects, even small animals. They can adapt to high mountains as easily as to seaside dunes. And wherever they arrive, they leave a trail of destruction. In the western provinces, fields of corn and sunflower lie flattened. In the north, tea plantations show patches of bare soil where herds rooted for worms. In the south, the citrus groves are riddled with holes. The irrigation pipes chewed through, the soil overturned. A farmer near Denizli told a journalist, "They come at night like ghosts. You hear the soil move before you see them. By the time you turn on your light, they're already gone. But the damage stays, always stays." Satellite images confirmed what locals had feared. In some areas, up to 30% of farmland had suffered repeated wild boar incursions. The soil was compacted, its natural structure ruined. In a single night, the hooves of 100 animals could trample hectares of seedlings, undoing months of cultivation. And yet, for the boars, this was not malice. It was instinct, survival. The same instinct that once helped them endure ice ages now drives them through the 21st century's farmlands. But instinct, when multiplied by numbers, becomes a force of destruction. What most people don't see lies beneath the surface. The real wounds aren't just the broken fences or ruined crops, they are ecological. Every time a herd digs into the ground, it disrupts the delicate web of roots, insects, and microorganisms. The soil loses its cohesion, making it more prone to erosion. After rain, nutrients are washed away into rivers. The rivers, now clogged with sediment, slow down, overflow, and flood nearby areas. In Antalya's highlands, scientists measured a 40% increase in soil erosion in areas frequented by wild boars. In central Anatolia, groundwater samples showed rising levels of coliform bacteria, likely due to boar activity contaminating water sources. Then came the diseases, the invisible soldiers of the invasion. African swine fever swept through parts of Europe, and Turkey feared the same fate. The virus doesn't infect humans, but devastates pig farms. Each outbreak can destroy an entire region's livestock economy. In addition, wild boars carry ticks, worms, and bacterial infections that spread to cattle, sheep, and even pets. Dalsilin Aden, a veterinarian from Eskişehir, recalls, "We started getting cases of cattle with unexplained fevers, wounds that wouldn't heal. It took weeks to trace it, back to wild boar feces contaminating pasture land. They don't just destroy crops, they bring disease. That's what scares me most. The ecosystem feels their presence like a fever. Birds lose nesting areas, small mammals abandon their burrows, even plant diversity declines as seeds are trampled before they can grow. The balance, the quiet, unseen harmony of nature is breaking apart." In the small village of Kızılcık, children no longer play outside after dark. Grandparents lock their chicken coops early, even in the heat of summer. One night, a boar smashed through the wooden gate of a courtyard, sending goats scattering. The family huddled inside, lights off, listening to the chaos outside. "I've seen wolves before," said an old shepherd, "but wolves fear man. These don't." Drivers report accidents on mountain roads. Headlights catching a dark blur, too late to brake. Insurance companies now classify wild boar collisions as a common rural hazard. In tourist towns near Bodrum, the story turns surreal. Visitors sometimes wake to find lawns dug up overnight, trash bins overturned, and hoof prints leading straight back into the forest. For city dwellers, it's an inconvenience. For locals, it's a warning. Nature is no longer staying in its place. Across the nation, one word keeps echoing: control. But how do you control a creature that has learned to outthink you? Many desperate farmers turned to electric traps, poison, and even homemade landmines. The result? Cattle, showing even children, were injured. Headlines followed: child hurt during wild boar chase. Toxic chemicals seep into village wells. Humanity had begun to pay the price for its own fear. In response, the government launched the Ecological Harmony Program, teaching farmers sustainable defense methods. Plant dense shrubs around fields to form natural green barriers. Rotate crops to make farmland less attractive to wild boars. Keep garbage and leftover feeds secure to avoid drawing them in. In the Geddes Delta, a pilot project known as the Natural Feeding Zone was introduced, guiding herds toward an enclosed forest area where they could forage without destroying crops. Within months, damage dropped by 40%. For the first time, humans and wild boars coexisted in fragile peace. By 2024, public attitudes began to shift. Journalists stopped saying eradicate the wild boar and started saying manage the population. People learned to live with them, not against them, because they finally understood nature cannot be erased, only balanced. Across villages, community funds were established to protect fields and share costs. Bio-observation posts were built to study herd behavior and pass down knowledge to future generations. What was once seen as an enemy had become a silent teacher, one that taught patience, discipline, and respect for the natural order. By year's end, the lights that lined the Anatolian fields glowed each dusk, not with fear, but with determination. People had learned to stand their ground in the darkness, to sense the rhythm of the forest, to read the language of the soil itself. An old farmer said, "I don't hate them anymore. They just want to live. They taught me that this land belongs to no one and to everyone." The wild boar, once branded a plague, had become a symbol of untamed vitality, resilient, intelligent, and proud. They destroy not out of malice, but in obedience to the oldest law of all, survival. And as humanity faces its own crises, climate change, dying forests, barren lands, and vanishing rivers, their lesson rings clearer than ever. No one truly conquers nature. Those who understand it endure.
Passa aqui, ó. Cadê, negão? A porquinha pequena essa aqui, como que é? Deixa eu te dar também. Você vai atacar cartucho pra quê? Virou paçoca, meu amigo!
Tuscany, the land where the earth tastes of wine and the air hums with centuries of dreams. Rolling hills glow beneath the Tuscan sun, golden fields breathing in rhythm with the wind, and vineyards stretching like ribbons of memory across the land. Here, every stone, every vine carries the weight of history, of farmers, poets, and artists who shape beauty out of soil and sweat. But beauty in Tuscany comes with a cost. When daylight fades and the mist creeps down from the Apennines, the land changes. Beneath that silver veil, something stirs. A presence as old as Europe itself. Not a predator in the traditional sense, but an invader more cunning than hunger, more stubborn than drought. The wild boar, born of man's neglect and nature's endurance. They roam the night like a forgotten army. Their tusks slice through vineyards, their hooves tear into fields once sculpted by generations. The earth shudders beneath their march. By dawn, the silence is deafening. Fences broken, crops shredded, the soil scarred like an open wound. Each year, these creatures cause over 250 million euros in losses across Italy, and nowhere bleeds more than Tuscany. From Siena's sunlit plains to the forest near Florence, the marks of their passage are everywhere. Farmers wake to find their year's labor erased, their dreams trampled into the mud. But this is more than economics. It's a collision of worlds, the cultivated versus the untamed, patience against persistence. Tuscany, cradle of art and refinement, is now forced into a battle it never sought. Some call it an infestation, others a reckoning. Nature reminding man that control is an illusion. As the government debates, as fences rise and fall, the wild swine continue their silent conquest, adapting faster than any solution. Yet amid the struggle, new alliances form. Farmers, biologists, and rangers unite, turning fear into action. Drones scan the forests, traps hum quietly under moonlight, and voices rise, determined to reclaim what was once theirs. Because this isn't just about saving crops. It's about defending the line between chaos and civilization, between what we nurture and what refuses to be tamed. Tuscany, once the world's postcard of serenity, now stands on the frontier of a war no one expected. And so we ask, who will stand between the vineyards and the wild? Who will protect the legacy of centuries from the creatures born of our own making? You're watching NEO Farm, where we explore the hidden wars between humanity and the natural world and witness the price of harmony undone. Across Italy, a silent disaster is unfolding. From the sunlit vineyards of Tuscany to the oak forests of Umbria, a dark tide moves under the moonlight, a living flood known to locals as the walking black wave. Millions of wild boars, descendants of long-forgotten domesticated stock, now roam free. Over 2.5 million strong, they have spread to nearly every region of the country. Each animal, capable of destroying up to 40 hectares of land in a single year, leaves behind scars that will take decades to heal. But the danger is deeper than ruined harvests. These creatures reshape entire ecosystems, devouring bird eggs, uprooting turtle nests, eroding forest floors, and spreading diseases that threaten both livestock and people. What began as a simple mistake of introduction has become one of Europe's most pervasive biological crises. At first, Italy fought back with what it had: steel traps, mesh snares, and baited enclosures designed to capture entire sounders. But the enemy was not only strong, it was intelligent. The boars learned, they remembered. Within months, they avoided the traps altogether, turning once effective tools into relics of human overconfidence. Realizing that brute force alone would fail, the people of Italy began to adapt. Farmers joined forces with hunters, rangers, and scientists. What followed was no longer mere resistance. It was coordination, a campaign that blended instinct and innovation. From GPS tracking collars and drones that patrol the night skies, to trained dogs moving through valleys at dawn, the effort became a choreography of survival. A nation that once worshipped the harmony of its countryside now fights to preserve it, not through conquest, but through understanding. Because this battle is no longer about destroying a species, it's about restoring balance, learning from past mistakes, and remembering that even in the heart of civilization, nature still has the final word. But then a new chapter began. No longer just footsteps in the mud or gunfire echoing through the woods, the war against wild boars in Italy had entered another phase, where data became the most powerful weapon of all. In the region of Emilia-Romagna, ecological researchers set motion sensors along every forest path. Each time something moved, cameras recorded, and the data was sent directly to satellites. Thousands of videos, millions of data points, all analyzed by artificial intelligence to predict the routes, habits, and breeding zones of each herd. Each heat map was more than an image. It was a living portrait of invasion. Dark red zones spread outward, like open wounds bleeding across the body of Italy. Governments, biologists, and farmers began to move as one unified machine. GPS signals from tagged boars, drone footage streamed to a central command, DNA samples collected from hair, soil, and biological traces. Together, they told a single story of reverse evolution, where a species was learning to understand humans faster than humans could understand them. And in a laboratory in Florence, difficult questions began to emerge. Could this population be controlled through biological hormones? Could a reproductive vaccine be designed to slow their growth without collapsing the ecosystem? Or were humans, once again, repeating the very mistake that unleashed them in the first place? Science and ethics now stood on the same fragile edge. Every decision, no matter how small, could alter the fate of millions of creatures in the lands they claimed. Yet amid the numbers, charts, and surveillance screens, one sound remained immeasurable: the forest breathing. Out there, wild boars still moved quietly through the morning mist. Unaware of research, unaware of data, they simply lived, as their ancestors once did, in the way nature had taught them. And perhaps, right there, humanity finally understood. In every attempt to control nature, the one thing we can never program is life itself. From Tuscany, the wild tide did not stop at Italy's borders. The Apennine Mountains were only the beginning. When winter came, the boars moved north, crossing the pine forests of Austria, the grasslands of Slovenia, and slipping through the borders of Switzerland, France, and Germany. One autumn night in 2023, thermal cameras from German forest rangers captured a herd of nearly 100 wild boars crossing the highway between Berlin and Brandenburg. A scene once thought fit only for fiction had become reality. Nature was entering the city. In France, vineyards in Bordeaux reported annual losses of tens of millions of euros. In Hungary, wildlife reserves documented the disappearance of several species of ground-nesting birds. In Spain, farmers called the boars the ghosts of the plains. They came by night, leaving only hoofprints like scars in the soil. The European Union began to take notice. Closed-door meetings were held in Brussels, where biologists, agricultural experts, and military officials sat at the same table. A continent-wide initiative was proposed, Project Artemis, a coordinated network of satellites, drones, and biosensors designed to monitor the transborder movement of wild boar populations. But technology could not conceal the truth. Every nation had its own policy, and nature recognized no borders. When Germany banned hunting during breeding season, France still allowed it. When Austria set traps, Switzerland protected its forests. And while lawmakers argued, the boars kept moving, not by the laws of man, but by the laws of survival. They learned faster than anyone expected. They migrated with the seasons, avoided areas patrolled by drones, recognized the hum of engines, even changed routes to stay clear of towns that smelled of gunpowder. Science called it behavioral adaptation. But to those who lived within the affected regions, it was something else: the return of the wild in its most intelligent form. In Poland, researchers began to speak of a frightening possibility. Without effective measures, by 2030, Europe's wild boar population could exceed 50 million. By then, it would no longer be just an agricultural issue, but a biosecurity threat. For within their DNA lay dormant the pathogens that once terrified entire continents: African swine fever, leptospirosis, Japanese encephalitis, and several zoonotic viruses capable of infecting humans. Those cold statistics slowly transformed into a new obsession of the 21st century. An invasion without armies, without declarations of war, only nature's patience and humanity's mistakes. And so, within the meeting rooms of the EU, one final question echoed like the voice of an age. How do we protect Europe from what nature itself has created? Perhaps the answer does not lie in laboratories, but in how we choose to live with nature rather than try to control it. From Tuscany to Tokyo, from the plains of America to the ancient forests of Vietnam, the story of the wild boar is no longer Europe's alone. In Florida, herds of feral hogs have devastated millions of hectares of farmland. In Australia, they've invaded nature reserves, reshaping entire river systems. In Japan, after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, when humans abandoned the area, it was the wild boars who reclaimed the empty city first. On the world map, the red dots, the places where boars have appeared, spread wider every year. They are more than animals. They are mirrors of adaptation, proof that nature always finds a way back, no matter how many fences humanity builds. Each nation, each land, continues to write its own chapter of the story. Some use drones and AI for surveillance. Some train specialized hunting dogs to protect farms. Some experiment with genetic technology to limit reproduction, and others simply learn to coexist. Because in the end, humanity cannot conquer nature through force, only balance it through understanding. For thousands of years, we have cultivated, domesticated, and defined the world in our own image. But the wild boar, once tamed, then forgotten, has returned to remind us of one truth. Nature never disappears. It only waits for its moment to speak again. And when their footsteps echo through the night, in the forests of Tuscany, across the grasslands of Texas, or along the misty mountains of northwest Vietnam, it is more than the sound of the wild. It is the voice of the earth asking us one timeless question: will humanity choose to control or to coexist? Wild boars cannot be completely eradicated. They are too clever, knowing how to dodge traps, avoid poisons, change their routes, and adapt to every method humans devise. This battle has never been about brute force against weapons. It is a game of wits between humans and the survival instincts of nature. From Tuscany in Italy to Texas, Brandenburg in the South American plains, this invasive species is becoming a global threat. A reminder of the consequences when humans intervene too deeply in nature. Hunters are not celebrated as heroes, yet they are the quiet guardians of life. The peace of harvests, villages, and forests comes at the cost of sweat, patience, and respect for nature. They hunt not to destroy, but to maintain order, to remind us that humans can only survive when we understand the balance between our power and our limits. The forests of Tuscany gradually fall silent. The night wind melts into the morning mist, leaving only the songs of birds echoing through the foliage. Yet the question remains, what do you think of this struggle? Can humans truly restore the balance between civilization and the wild? If you believe these stories need to be told, share them, discuss them, and walk alongside us. Neo Farm, where instincts speak and nature tells its own story.